But sweet baby Jesus, he got incredibly frustrating. Absolutely check content warnings, because wow. I was just like, I want to shake you. Like, what are you doing? I'm sure I'm saying these words wrong, but whatever. Well, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about some friggin' books that I mostly read in October. 2 DNFs from the end of September to cover very quickly. The first of these DNFs was a NetGalley e-arc, and all year I've been trying very hard to not DNF NetGalley e-arcs so much, but this one I could not. And the book in question is Crux by Gabriel Tallent. And this one is, it's like rock climbing stuff. The synopsis: in this story of intense friendship and grit, 2 down and out teens escape their lives and chase a different future through rock climbing. That's the what am I trying to say? Blurb. Jesus. I'm not gonna read the entire thing, but yeah, it's these 2 teenagers, a guy and a girl that are friends. The girl is a lesbian and she is horny all the time. My God. And yeah, it's them living in this very kind of poor area out in the desert, out in the country, and they're trying to be rock climbers, and they're obsessed. And I DNF'd this at 19%. I was just not getting into it, man. The dialogue from the teenagers was so precocious and very annoying. Just not really realistic to me at all. And the dialogue, there was one part where it was like almost a whole chapter of one of the main characters, Tama, monologuing forever, giving their backstory. Like literally giving her parents' backstory, her best friend's family's backstory, just giving like this long ass monologue that was so pretentious and ridiculous. And I was like, this is not how people speak, and this just feels like info dumping via dialogue. And also, there was so much rock climbing jargon, like specific jargon that you only would understand if you know anything about rock climbing. I have no idea what it means, and I was finding it to be difficult to just kind of roll with it as like, I don't know what this means, it's something about rock climbing, like I would do normally. For some reason in this, it kept pulling me out where I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was having trouble accepting it in my head as just, this is random rock climbing jargon. It just was pulling me out. So I gave up. The next one is quite a bummer. Another DNF. This was a fantasy. Oh yeah, the last book was contemporary, if you couldn't tell. This one is fantasy, historical fantasy, and it is beloved. I initially heard about this from Shelly Space, but she loved it. And I think she had read the first 2 books when I saw her talking about it, and she loved both of them. And like Elle went on to read this and loved it. A lot of people love it. And that is The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna, Lawless. I'll read the synopsis for this one. It's not quite as long as the other. 981 AD, the Viking king of Dublin is dead. His young widow, Gormflaith, has ambitions for her son and herself. But Ireland is a dangerous place, and kings tend not to stay kings for long. Gormflaith also has a secret. She is one of the Fomorians, an immortal race who can do fire magic. She has kept her powers hidden at all costs, for there are other immortals in this world, like the Tuatha De Danann. I'm sure I'm saying these words wrong, but whatever. A race of warriors who are sworn to kill Fomorians. Fodla is one of the Tuatha De Danann with the gift of healing. Her kind dwell hidden in a fortress, forbidden to live amongst the mortals. Fodla agrees to help her kin by going to spy on Brian Boru, a powerful man who aims to be High King of Ireland. She finds a land on the brink of war, a war she is desperate to stop. However, preventing the loss of mortal lives is not easy with Ireland in turmoil and the Fomorians now on the rise. I DNF'd this one at 29%. I just could not get invested at all. I don't know what it was, the writing. I just couldn't get invested in the plot, in the characters. I did not care about anything that was going on in the slightest. And I also ran into this whole thing of magical illusion to make you hideous so that men won't want to have sex with you thing that happened with the character. And I don't know what it was. It rubbed me the wrong way. Really rubbed me the wrong way. It seemed like a message of like sexual assault and unwanted sexual advances only happens when men find women attractive. So we will make you unattractive, therefore they leave you alone. And I hate that because it's not necessarily, attractiveness is in the eye of the beholder, but they made her like all grotesque, burned, and like, you know, very, very kind of deformed and burned, and half of her face missing almost, like the skin all crazy and her hair all singed. Like they went really extreme with it. But I'm like, dude, if a guy is the type of guy to sexual assault women, it's not about attraction. They're not just out here sexually assaulting women that they find attractive. It's a power move. It's like a real fucked up thing. It's not just, oh, she's hot, so I want to fucking rape her. Like, what are we talking about? I don't know. And maybe something later happened to dispel this message, but I wasn't into the story enough either to like care to continue. Okay, now getting into October. Some books I read. I read a lot in October. I will say a lot of it was rereading Monstrous, starting from the beginning. So a lot of it was that. But I did still read a decent amount of like actual books. And there's only one DNF. Love that for me. And it's actually not the end of October just yet while I'm recording this, but it's only a few days away. I'm in the middle of a book right now that probably will be the last one that I finish. Anyway, and all of these were read for either Blackoween or Gothtober. I did those readathons. Even though Blackoween was technically canceled this year, but I had the prompts all set up and figured out, so I just went ahead and did it anyways. And I did it for, oh, now I can't remember, where is it? Hold on. The like location I did was Bayou Haunted House. But yeah, I had done some for Joe's Library, but I hadn't completed it. But then I did use a book in October that completed Joe's Library. But most of these are for the Bayou Haunted House location. And this book covered the ghost story prompt as well as house, mansion, estate in title. And the book in question is The Good House by Tananarive Due. This was my first Tananarive Due. The summary of this: the home that belonged to Angela Toussaint's late grandmother is so beloved that the townspeople in Sacagawea, Washington call it the Good House. But that all changes one summer when an unexpected tragedy takes place behind its closed doors, and the Toussaint's family history and future is dramatically transformed. Angela has not returned to the Good House since her son Corey died there 2 years ago. But now Angela is finally ready to return to her hometown and go beyond the grave to unearth the truth about Corey's death. Could it be related to a terrifying entity Angela's grandmother battled 7 decades ago? And what about the other senseless calamities that Sacagawea has seen in recent years? Has Angela's grandmother, an African-American woman reputed to have powers, put a curse on the entire community? Themes here of ancestral knowledge, for sure. Grief, loss, trauma, healing, all of the above. The TLDR here, my quick and easy opinion. I had a good time with this, but not necessarily like a memorably great time. It was engaging for the most part. Did have some creepy eepy moments for sure. I'm not a big horror reader though, and there was kind of an excessive amount of like odd, uncomfy sex stuff thrown in here, which I know can be like a thing in horror. It just like threw me for a loop a little bit a couple times where I was like, why are we doing this? And again, I know it's like a thing in horror a lot of the time, kind of adding to the unease that you're feeling while you're reading. And I did also find myself feeling a little bit ambivalent toward the ending and how things were wrapped up. I don't know if I loved it. But getting into the writing, I did feel like this was very well written, for sure. And like 95% of the time, I found the writing to be very engaging. like grabbing my attention a lot. And for the characters, Angela, the main character, I liked her well enough. I found her to be a pretty compelling character overall. And I did like Miles generally, but sweet baby Jesus, he got incredibly frustrating toward the end. His stubborn denial about what he was seeing with his own eyes made me crazy. I was just like, I want to shake you. Like, what are you doing? You can see the crazy shit happening, but he's still like, ghosts aren't real. None of this is real. What? I'm like, bro, it's literally happening to you. Like, it's real. What the fuck? And for the plot and the pacing, I do think that around like the 75% mark, there was a little bit of a lull for me personally. I feel like 100 pages could have been cut out somewhere throughout the book. Also, y'all know I'm not a big fan of a second chance romance trope, and it is fucking plaguing me this year. It is following me around everywhere I go in my reading journey. Different genres, like it's everywhere. And it was present in this book. And I just find it hard, like I've said, I find it hard to get behind it. I find it hard to care because I'm just like, what are we doing here? And then again, the ending did leave me feeling kind of meh, I suppose, ambivalent. I'm not really sure about it. And then I won't say, but there's a couple sex scenes that I just was like uncomfy with. There's one, without giving details, where someone has sex with someone who is asleep. Like they've had consensual sex, wake up in the morning. One of them is not awake though, and the other one is, and the other one starts engaging in sex with the partner and they're still asleep. But it's like written as if it's like this loving, caring, oh, I'm just being gentle trying to not wake them. And I was like, huh? What? What are we talking about? And then like randomly getting information about some random characters that aren't the main characters at all, but they're involved in the plot. But like randomly we're told about some like kinky bedroom stuff that they're into, where the husband pretends to be the funny uncle with his niece that's his wife. And I was like, I don't need this information. Like, what was the point of telling me this? I don't know. And again, I think maybe the point, I'm not well versed with horror, but I know that that is a thing that can happen with horror books and movies and whatever, is like uncomfortable sex stuff. And I think it just is like adding to the unease you're feeling. But I was like, I don't know if I need that to add to the unease like at all. Definitely content warnings, all of the content warnings. Please check them if you need them for anything. I will say things involving, obviously per the synopsis, involving child death. The loss of a child is very present. There's also racism happening, racial slurs on page. There's some animal kind of cruelty, animal death stuff involved, some sexual content for sure. Suicidal ideation, thoughts, attempts, etc. There's also gun violence, very prevalent here. So yeah, all those things. But yeah, I really liked this. I didn't love it. It wasn't like the most memorable read ever, probably. I felt it was one of those that I'm like, overall, it was a good time. You know, it was well written. It was a solid story. Just nothing that I was like, oh my God, amazing. But I really liked it. So, solid first foray into Tananarive Dew's work. Not mad at it. Next, I read When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. The kind of blurb here of this one, the summary of it, it's a haunting novel about a Black woman who returns to her hometown for a freaking plantation wedding, and the horror that ensues as she is reconnecting with the blood-soaked history of this land and the best friends that she left behind. Themes here again of ancestral knowledge, racism on full display, and like systemic racism, historical racism and how it still affects us today, generational trauma for sure, and a deep desire for vengeance. Definitely check content warnings for this again. The TLDR here is, I read this very quickly, but the pacing felt really off, inconsistent, or I don't know, it didn't flow that well for me. And I felt like the ending was a bit unsatisfying. It was like a little like wah, wah, wah. I guess it wasn't what I was expecting, and I was expecting something more, I suppose. There are some truly horrific things happening in this. Absolutely check content warnings, because wow. And I do appreciate the message here, for sure, of like remembering the true history of a people and of a country, of things that have happened to people, and respecting what that, like being respectful enough to tell the true history, right? To not be whitewashing shit. Just of racism and of course of slavery being like truly monstrous, hateful things that have happened in the past, still happen to this day in the world. I just don't think the execution of the message was done like as well as I would have liked, I guess. And I had a fair amount of random gripes with the plot and writing, so yeah. For the writing, I feel like the author did a little bit too much showing rather than telling. And like repetitive stuff. There was something where our main character, his name is Mira, says, Mira sensed that there was so much more Jesse wasn't telling her. Literally 4 pages later, there was more Jesse wasn't telling her. Stuff like that where I'm like, I already know this. You just told me, you know? And a fair amount of the dialogue also felt like awkward and like forced exposition. You know, like it didn't feel like how people actually talk. It felt like the author being like, I need to convey something to you, which is why an author might use dialogue for sure, but like it needs to feel natural still. It still needs to feel like a real conversation that people might have. And for the characters, I didn't feel all that much for the characters here, other than the white people all sucked. They were vile, horrible racists. So they sucked and I hated them, of course. But I didn't find myself really getting engaged with the main characters all that much. I don't know, something about the way they were written. I just wasn't getting really invested in them. Again, though, fucking second chance romance plaguing me. And I really don't think it needed to exist in this story at all. I don't know what the point was of having this second chance romance. I think that it would have been more believable and more compelling if it was just two childhood friends rekindling their platonic friendship. That would have struck a chord with me more than this, like, again, because the second chance romance, and in this case, they never dated. They were friends and kind of had like a crush on each other, clearly, but it was never even something spoken between them. And then we come back like over a decade later or whatever, and we're still hung up, and I was just like, I don't buy it. Like, I don't what are we doing? So I feel like it would have been better if it was just like platonic friendship and like rekindling this like deep bond we had as kids, you know? For the plot and the pacing, like I said, the pacing just felt weird to me. It felt off, and the ending felt very rushed. As well as a little bit anticlimactic on top of it. And I have a fair amount of random gripes with the plot and like stuff done. It's stuff that probably wouldn't bother or even bother anyone else or even get noticed by most people because they're random as shit. And then this kind of did bother me. And maybe a little spoilery, I'll be very vague as much as possible though, but at one point our two main characters, they go to the cemetery on the plantation grounds, okay? And they're seeing tombstones for the plantation owners' family members. And it says, after they'd gone through them all, Mira looked back at Jesse, horrified. This is it? She said, there's got to be more. What about the slaves? Where are their graves? All right? Initially, I'm like, okay, I would think that these two who grew up in the South, who grew up next to this plantation, and who are both black themselves, they would probably know that it would be odd for the slaves to be buried in the family plot, right? You would think they would know. Then I'm like, maybe we're trying to have a conversation here, though, of like history being erased. Maybe they weren't taught that. I would know this. I'm from the North, but I'm, Michigan, whatever. But like maybe we're trying to have a conversation of like in the South where this stuff affected people that we're like hiding the truth. We're not teaching the kids about this. Maybe. I find it hard to believe, but like maybe that's a conversation we're trying to have, right? Except then they do find one grave that has a fieldstone marker with a first name on it, and Mira recognizes it as one of her ancestors. So that's the only one that doesn't have like a whole tombstone. It's just a little fieldstone and it's just her first name, but she knows that it's a slave. So then it says, who had Marceline been to the rest of them? Had she been Roman's lover, the plantation owner? Or was she his daughter? She was important enough to be buried in this graveyard with the rest of the family, but Mira wanted to know why. Okay, so do you find it confusing or not? This felt like conflicting information to me. Initially, we're like, oh, where are the slaves? And then we are 2 seconds later saying, oh, it is weird that a slave is here. I want to know why she's here because it's very odd that she's here. Which one is it? You think it's weird or you don't understand? Like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, this is conflicting. What are we, huh? It was just very contradictory. And then when Mira was talking to Celine, the bride getting married, asking her why the hell she's having her wedding at a plantation, because, yeah, don't do that. And she says, my family didn't own slaves. Celine says, my family didn't own slaves. You know, she's white. And then later, Mira is relaying this conversation to Jesse, and she says, I asked her about it last night. She said she hadn't owned slaves. Well, obviously Celine didn't own slaves. We're in modern times. she wouldn't have owned slaves. She's born in like the late 1980s, you know, or the early 1990s. I don't know. So I'm just like, what? So just, again, the writing, it just felt like the author forgetting like what had been said, I guess. I don't know. And just a couple other random things like that. It ended up making this one kind of in like, I kind of disliked. It's like the lower end of middle of the road and like kind of disliked it. You know, I would say it's like middle of the road. I had these qualms, but I did read through it pretty quickly. And again, I like the messaging. I appreciate the themes. I appreciate the messaging of it. I just didn't find the execution of everything to, I guess, be to my taste. You know, it is what it is. Then I finally reread Ring Shout. I read this when it came out in, 2020? Yes. And I have not read it since then, and I've wanted to for a long time, because this is one of the only fucking novellas that I've ever read that I, love. It's, one of, 3. And I ended up basically, well, not basically, I did. I buddy read this with Roger, because he had never read it before, and he wanted to. And I used this for a couple of the prompts for the Joe's Library location for Blackoween, and I also used it for some prompts for Gothtober. I do not have my notes right now for Gothtober prompts, so I don't remember what my prompts were or what this one fit, but it did fit for some. The quick blurb for this is it's a dark fantasy historical novella that is giving a supernatural twist to the Ku Klux Klan's reign of terror. Themes here, once again, of ancestral knowledge, generational trauma, some good versus evil, healing from trauma, the importance of community, I would say, is on display here. Hate being poison, how hate can fester within a soul, and the difference between hate and anger. TLDR, I still love this upon reread. It's such a cool concept, and I think that P. Djeli Clark takes it to really cool, interesting places. I love these characters. The writing, I think, is fabulous, a very engaging writing style here, and I really like how he infuses the POV characters, don't mind the dog barking if you can hear that, their dialect / accent, not just in her dialogue, also in just the text of her explaining things that she's doing. I think it just made her feel so authentic and unique. And Roger listened to the audiobook and he said the audiobook narrator is great and does all the different accents and dialects and everything, all the Creole and whatnot, and he really enjoyed the audiobook. And yeah, the characters, I said it the first time I read this, these characters just jump off the page to me, right away. I feel like I know them, I feel like they are familiar. I've said this so many times about this book, it felt like jumping into an episode in the middle of the 3rd or 4th season of a show I love. I already know them, I'm just seeing what they're doing now today. And that did not change. Of course, I would love a full-length novel following Maurice and her badassery, but this novella does feel complete to me as far as the character development. The pacing and the plot stuff, obviously, I think for being a novella, most times novellas are gonna have pretty quick pacing, and that is the case here. But how the story plays out makes sense, and everything flows together really well, in my opinion. And oh my good God, super cinematic scenes throughout this book where I'm just like, I'm there, I can see it. And it would be so cool as a TV show or a movie or something. And I have some quotes that I really love, but I won't say them because they're kind of spoilery, but they pertain to Maurice being a total fucking badass towards the end of the book. Some of her lines, I'm like, oh, love that shit. It's so good. Content warnings for some body horror stuff going on. Fire, injury, I guess. Definitely racism and racial slurs, as you may imagine based on the premise. Gore, violence, some murder, etc. And this was a favorite. It still is a 5-star favorite for me. And I've been yammering long enough for now, I think. I will stop. That's only like 4 or 5 books. I've got lots more for October, but honestly, The Monstrous, I'll probably just kind of talk about all as one thing, even though it's 9 volumes. So that is all for now. Let me know if you have read any of these books, and if so, what your thoughts were. And you can, of course, leave an emoji to just say hello, make your presence known if you would like. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.